Let's talk about something most men are never taught, but are silently judged for every day. Emotional discipline, not emotional suppression, not emotional numbness. I'm talking about the quiet power of feeling everything, but showing only what you choose to show. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Women are not attracted to men who don't feel. They are drawn to men who feel and remain composed. And that distinction, although subtle, is everything. You see, we live in a world that is constantly sending men mixed messages. On one hand, you're told to open up, to be vulnerable, to communicate. On the other, you're punished, often silently, for appearing too emotional, too reactive, too needy. It's a trap, a confusing one. And unless you understand how to navigate it with awareness, you'll either shut down entirely or overshare in a way that kills attraction. Women are biologically wired to seek safety in connection, emotional, psychological, and even spiritual safety. That safety doesn't come from a man who never feels anything. It comes from a man who can be present with his emotions without crumbling under them. He doesn't lose his sense of self when someone challenges him. He doesn't spiral when he feels insecure. He can stand in the storm of his own feelings, and hers, without needing to be rescued or to dominate the room. That's emotional discipline, and it is a form of leadership, even if it's quiet. Even if it's invisible, the most attractive men, the men who make women lean in with curiosity and respect, are the ones who don't perform stability. They embody it. These men don't pretend they're unaffected. They just don't allow temporary emotions to dictate permanent behavior. And that's what separates them from the rest. Because here's a reality few want to accept. No matter how good you look, how much money you make, or how clever your words are, if your emotions rule you, you're not safe to be around long term. You're unpredictable. And unpredictability without emotional control isn't exciting. It's exhausting. Now, don't misunderstand me. I'm not advocating for men to be stone walls. In fact, the complete shutdown of emotion, the kind that makes a man feel cold, disconnected, or robotic, is equally unattractive. That's not strength, that's fear wearing a mask. True masculine presence doesn't come from hiding emotions. It comes from mastering them. Think about that, mastery, not avoidance. Imagine this. You're with a woman and she says something that stings. Maybe it touches a wound you haven't healed yet. A man without emotional discipline reacts immediately. He snaps back, gets defensive, tries to win. A man with emotional discipline pauses. He breathes. He checks in with himself, and then he responds, not from ego, but from centeredness. That moment, that gap between the trigger and the response is everything. That's where attraction is either built or broken. Women are watching how you respond to conflict. They're watching how you handle silence, how you navigate disappointment. They are not just listening to what you say, they're studying what you do under pressure. And when they see that your emotions don't hijack you, they trust you more. They desire you more, because you become the calm in the chaos. And in a world where most people are drowning in their reactivity, being that grounded presence makes you unforgettable. Now here's where it gets deeper. Emotional discipline isn't about her at all. It's not a performance to impress or manipulate. It's a practice of self-respect. It's how you treat yourself when no one's watching. Because when you learn to sit with your anger, your insecurity, your jealousy, without needing to project it onto someone else, you evolve. You become a man who isn't afraid of his own shadow, and that's powerful. Because if you're not afraid of your emotions, she doesn't have to be either. That creates the kind of space where real intimacy can exist. A woman wants to feel that you can hold space for her without losing yourself in the process. That when she brings her storm, you don't disappear, attack, or shut down. That when you face your own storm, you don't make it her job to fix you. You fix yourself, you lead yourself, and in doing so, you give her something incredibly rare, a sense of trust. A sense that you are rooted, not just present but anchored. And no, this doesn't mean you won't feel pain, you will. Emotional discipline doesn't eliminate pain, it refines your relationship to it. You'll still get triggered. You'll still feel rejected, insecure, or misunderstood. But you won't drown in it, you'll learn to swim, and that is what makes you irresistible. Not the absence of emotion, but the ability to channel it. Transmute it, hold it, without being consumed by it. There's a masculine elegance in a man who has mastered this. He doesn't raise his voice to command respect. He doesn't beg to be seen. He simply is. And his presence speaks volumes. So if there's one thing you take from this, let it be this. Your ability to manage your inner world is the very thing that determines the quality of your outer relationships. Stop chasing tactics. Start mastering yourself. Women don't need you to be perfect, but they crave a man who is emotionally reliable, not robotic, not reactive, just steady. And when you become that kind of man, not through force, but through awareness, you won't have to prove your worth to anyone. You'll radiate it. And they will feel it before you ever say a word. Let's get into something most people don't want to hear. Because it's uncomfortable, because it holds up a mirror. Your boundaries determine your value. Not your looks, not your money, not your charm, your boundaries. What you tolerate, what you allow, and most importantly, what you walk away from, is what tells the world how to treat you, and women are exceptionally attuned to this. You see, we all talk about confidence like it's some mysterious X factor. We say things like, just be confident and the right person will come. But confidence isn't a loud voice or a flashy lifestyle. It's not swagger or dominance. At its core, confidence is the embodied belief that you are enough. And boundaries are how that belief shows up in action. When a man has boundaries, he communicates, without even speaking, that he respects himself. He's not out here trying to convince a woman to like him. He's not changing his opinions, minimizing his needs, or softening his values just to keep someone around. And ironically, that's what makes him irresistible. Because women don't want to feel like they're in control of your identity. They want to trust that you know who you are even when they test you. And yes, you will be tested, not out of malice, but because human beings naturally seek to understand the edges of others. Especially in relationships, when a woman pushes, emotionally, behaviorally, even subtleish, she's not necessarily looking for you to change. She's often checking to see, will he hold the line? Because when you do, she feels safer. She respects you more, she's more drawn to you, not because you said no, but because you had something real to protect, yourself. Now, here's where most men lose the thread. They confuse having boundaries with being hard, cold, or controlling. But that's not what this is about. Boundaries are not about domination. They're about clarity. They're not walls to keep people out. They're doors that show who gets to come in, and under what conditions. And if you don't know your boundaries, someone else will define them for you. Think about the man who constantly overextends himself in relationships. The one who's always available, who never disagrees, who says yes to everything because he's afraid of losing her. What happens? She pulls away. Why? Because even if she can't articulate it, she feels that his yes isn't grounded in truth. It's driven by fear, and fear repels desire. Women don't want to mother you, fix you, or tiptoe around your emotional fragility. They want a partner who can stand. Now contrast that with a man who knows where his line is, who is kind, present, loving, but firm. He doesn't get angry when his boundary is tested, but he doesn't move it either. He simply lets his actions do the talking. He might say, I don't do drama. And when drama shows up, he disengages. No lecture, no chase, just clarity. And in that moment, something happens. She realizes he means what he says. He becomes someone she can't manipulate, and therefore, someone she can finally trust. That kind of man is rare, and because he's rare, he becomes valuable. See, the world teaches you to chase, to impress, to perform, but real magnetism doesn't come from over-efforting. It comes from alignment, when your words match your values, when your behavior is consistent with your standards, when you say no, and mean it, you radiate a different frequency. One that says, I am not here to be consumed, I am here to be chosen, by the right person, That energy is potent, and women feel it the moment you walk into a room. It's in the way you carry yourself, the way you say less and mean more. You don't need to control the dynamic. You are the dynamic, because your presence communicates that you're not afraid of being alone, that you don't need her validation to feel whole, and ironically, that's when she wants to offer it most. Boundaries are a signal to the world that you are not for everyone, and that's what creates desire. People don't value what they can access too easily. When you make yourself too available, too accommodating, too eager to please, you dilute your own power. You become forgettable, not because you weren't good enough, but because you didn't require anything. Here's something to remember: when you have no boundaries, you teach people that you have no value. That might sting, but it's the truth. You teach them that your time is flexible, your standards are negotiable, your self-worth is conditional, and that message, it kills attraction. So ask yourself, what do you stand for? What do you no longer tolerate? Where do you draw the line? Because until you answer those questions with clarity, you'll keep attracting situations that drain you, confuse you, or leave you wondering why people don't treat you the way you deserve. And the answer is, you haven't required them to. That doesn't mean being rigid. Growth requires flexibility, but flexibility without principles becomes passivity. And there's nothing attractive about a man who floats wherever the wind blows. Women want a man who can bend without breaking, who can hear her needs without abandoning his own. When you embody that kind of presence, when you know what you expect and live by it, you don't have to explain yourself. You become a man of substance. You stop being a chameleon and you start being a compass, and that, more than anything, is what makes you unforgettable. Let's break one of the most misunderstood illusions about attraction wide open. Predictability does not equal security. In fact, it often kills desire. What keeps women magnetically drawn to a man over time isn't just kindness, consistency, or how much he's willing to give. It's a subtler, deeper quality, mystery coupled with emotional depth. And when those two live together inside a man, he becomes unforgettable. Now, when I say mystery, I don't mean playing games or being manipulative. I don't mean disappearing for days to seem interesting or being vague on purpose to create insecurity. That's immaturity dressed up as power. True mystery is something entirely different. It's the presence of depth, an emotional, intellectual, and even spiritual richness that suggests there's always more to discover. A man who is mysterious in this way doesn't withhold to control. He simply knows that not everything needs to be said, proven, or explained. That quiet restraint, it sparks a woman's curiosity in the most primal way. Because humans by nature are drawn to what they don't fully understand, especially when that mystery is paired with grounded, emotional substance. It's the man who is constantly evolving, not for attention, but because he is genuinely invested in becoming more of himself. The man who can sit in silence without needing to fill it, who is passionate about his own inner world, not obsessed with showing it off. Here's the truth: if you give everything away too quickly, your history, your plans, your opinions, your emotional landscapes, you rob someone of the thrill of discovery. And discovery is the engine of intimacy. Women don't fall in love with data points. They fall in love with the feeling that there's more to you than what's visible, that the more they observe, the more they'll uncover. The man who gives too much too fast may be appreciated, yes. But the man who reveals himself slowly, intentionally, with depth, he becomes unforgettable. You might be thinking, but shouldn't I be honest? Shouldn't I be transparent? And yes, absolutely. But there's a difference between being authentic and being unfiltered. Transparency without discernment doesn't create connection. It creates oversaturation. Think about it. When you watch a great film, the story doesn't reveal everything in the first 5 minutes. It unfolds. Scene by scene, moment by moment, that pacing keeps you engaged. The same is true in how you carry yourself. When you have depth, when you read, reflect, heal, grow, you begin to carry a kind of gravity with you. A weight, and that weight is felt in your presence. You don't have to overtalk or prove how interesting you are. The way you observe a room, the way you ask questions, the way you pause before responding, all of that says, I've been through things you can't see. And trust me, that unspoken energy speaks louder than any clever pickup line ever will. Now let's go even deeper, because this isn't just about creating attraction. It's about being the kind of man who sustains it. Over time, what keeps a woman captivated isn't how much you give, it's how much you grow. A man who is always reaching, expanding, learning, becomes a source of endless inspiration. He's never stuck in the same story. He doesn't become emotionally stagnant. He doesn't lean so heavily on what he was that he forgets to become something new. That's the man she wants to keep discovering, and it's not just about career or knowledge. Emotional depth matters just as much, if not more. Can you hold space for contradiction? Can you carry your own pain without leaking it? Can you share your struggles without needing her to rescue you? Emotional depth means you've done the inner excavation. You've faced your insecurities, your patterns, your past, and instead of outsourcing that work to a woman, you own it. That responsibility, that maturity, it's magnetic. Because here's a truth very few men understand. The deepest desire a woman has is not to be impressed by a man, it's to be moved by him, to be challenged and awakened by his presence. And the only way you can offer that is by being a man who is still challenging and awakening himself. You don't need to become mysterious. You already are. The problem is, most men bury their mystery under performance. They try to be impressive instead of being real. They reveal too much too soon because they're afraid that what lies beneath might not be enough. But the irony is that very restraint, that quiet confidence that says, you'll see more when the time is right, is the thing women find irresistible. So what does this look like practically? It means you don't have to over-explain yourself. You let your actions create the story. You don't rush emotional intimacy. You let it unfold. You leave space for curiosity. You ask more questions than you answer. You stay curious about yourself, your purpose, your evolution. You show her that your identity is not complete, and that she's not being invited into a finished picture, but into a living story. When a woman senses that, something shifts. You become less of a moment and more of a mystery. You're no longer just a man who's available. You become a journey she wants to go on, not because she's trying to figure you out, but because being around you helps her discover more about herself. And that's when desire deepens into something rare. So if you want to be irresistible, not just liked, not just chosen, but remembered, don't become louder, don't become more impressive, become deeper. Become more internally driven. Let your life be a quiet revolution. Evolve in silence. Cultivate mystery by becoming the kind of man who's always unfolding, never performing. Absolutely. Here's an in-depth 900-word expansion of Key Point 4, written in a clear, psychologically nuanced tone that seamlessly continues the emotional and intellectual flow of the speech. The theme is in line with the previous points: emotional depth, power, presence, but now takes us into a deeper philosophical layer. There's something most men overlook when trying to become more attractive to women. They focus so much on what to do, and so little on what they believe. But attraction, real lasting attraction, isn't built on actions alone. It's built on energy, on presence, on internal alignment, and one of the deepest truths you'll ever learn is this: a man who lives with purpose is magnetic in ways that words and techniques can never replicate. Not ambition, not hustle, not the endless pursuit of success, but purpose, that quiet clarity that your life stands for something beyond approval, beyond comfort, beyond short-term pleasure. A man who lives in purpose doesn't chase women because he's already moving in a direction that fulfills him. And that self-sufficiency isn't just powerful, it's liberating for him and for her. You see, when a man is clear on who he is, what he values, and what path he's on, his energy shifts. He's not reactive. He's not desperately trying to be chosen. He's not constantly seeking permission to exist. He's already anchored, and that kind of man is rare. In a world full of distraction, dopamine, and shallow validation. A man who moves with intention feels like a breath of fresh air. Women are naturally drawn to men like this, not because they're perfect, but because they're directional, because you can feel their center when you're around them. They're not easily pulled off track. They don't compromise who they are for temporary attention. And when they give you their time, it feels meaningful. It feels chosen, because they're not handing it out to everyone. Now here's what most men miss. Living with purpose doesn't mean having it all figured out. It doesn't mean you've reached some mountain of success. It means you're in pursuit of something deeper than just gratification. It means you wake up each day with a sense of direction, not just to make money or gain status, but to become more of who you were designed to be. That kind of internal pursuit is electric, and the irony is, the more deeply a man commits to his path, the more naturally he becomes attractive, not because he's trying to be, but because there's nothing more compelling than someone who doesn't need your attention to feel complete. He invites connection, but he doesn't depend on it. He appreciates affection, but he doesn't chase it. That energetic detachment is not cold, it's centered, and it makes women feel safe to desire you without feeling manipulated or smothered. Think about it when your life is full of meaning, when you are creating, building, evolving. Your energy becomes rich, your words slow down, your presence deepens. You're not constantly trying to prove something because you know that your life as it stands is already worthy. And this kind of embodiment doesn't just attract women. It attracts respect from friends, from peers, from the world, because we live in a time where most people are drifting, reacting, copying, performing. And when you refuse to live that way, when you root yourself in purpose, even if it's quiet, even if it's still evolving, you rise above the noise, you stop being one of many, you become one of one. Purpose doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be public. It just has to be real. Maybe it's how you protect your peace, how you show up for your family, how you master your craft. Purpose can be as grand as building an empire or as humble as living with integrity in a world that rewards compromise. What matters is that it's yours, that it calls you to something higher than comfort. Because let's face it, comfort is the modern drug. Men get lost in it, seduced by ease, by pleasure, by the path of least resistance. But the man who resists that pull, who chooses discipline over distraction, meaning over momentary highs, becomes a man of gravity, and women can feel that, even when they don't know how to name it, especially when they don't know how to name it. It's not about being emotionally distant. You can be wildly passionate and deeply loving and still rooted in purpose. In fact, the deeper your sense of purpose, the more love you're capable of offering. Because you're not offering it from a place of emptiness. You're offering it from a place of overflow. That's the paradox. The more whole you become on your own, the more attractive you are in relationship. Not because you're detached, but because you're full. You're no longer seeking a partner to complete you. You're inviting them into a life that's already rich with meaning. And that's where the deepest connection lies. Not in performance, but in presence. Not in seduction, but in substance. So here's the question every man should be asking himself. Not how can I attract her, but what kind of life am I inviting her into? Because when that life is purposeful, when it's built on inner truth rather than outer noise, you don't just attract a woman. You attract the right woman, the one who sees your vision, not just your face. The one who's drawn to your direction, not just your attention. Let's talk about something most men don't even realize they're being evaluated on, and it has nothing to do with looks, status, or how smooth your words are. It's about how you handle pressure. Because in relationships, especially with emotionally intelligent women, you're not judged by how you behave when everything is calm. You're judged by who you become when things get hard. It's in the tension, in the miscommunication, in the moments when your ego wants to scream, when your pride wants to run, or when your emotions want to explode. That is when your real character is revealed. And here's the truth that stings for some and empowers others. A man's ability to hold himself with calm strength under pressure is not just admirable, it's magnetic. Because women aren't looking for a man who never gets triggered. That's not realistic. Everyone gets triggered. What they're drawn to is a man who doesn't let that trigger define the moment. A man who can feel the anger, the fear, the insecurity rise and still choose his response with intention. That's power, not control over her, but control over yourself. And that, more than anything, creates emotional safety. The kind of safety that builds trust, respect, and yes, desire. When a woman sees that you don't crumble the moment there's conflict, that you don't lash out when you feel unseen, or fall apart when something doesn't go your way, something shifts. You move from being just another option to being a man she can actually build with. Because strength isn't about dominance or who speaks the loudest. It's about stability, it's about presence. So many men mistake intensity for power. They think if they raise their voice, if they dominate the space, they'll command attention. But true presence doesn't demand attention, it naturally earns it. And nothing is more commanding than a man who refuses to be hijacked by his emotions. Not because he suppresses them, but because he knows how to hold them. This kind of presence is built, not born. It's the result of doing the inner work of learning how to self-regulate, how to pause before reacting, how to sit with discomfort instead of avoiding it, and that's the real edge. That's where you separate yourself, because let's be honest, the average man is emotionally reactive. He externalizes his pain, projects his fear, or checks out entirely, and that might be common, but it's not compelling. Especially not to a high-quality woman. When you meet a woman who is emotionally evolved, intelligent, and intuitive, she's not looking to be your therapist, your emotional sponge, or your crisis manager. She's looking to see if you're someone she can trust with her own vulnerability. And if you can't handle your own emotional storms, how can she possibly trust you to hold space for hers? This is where emotional maturity becomes the highest currency you can carry. Not just in love, but in life. Because a man who is calm under pressure is also usually calm in business, in friendships, in leadership. He becomes someone others look to when things go sideways. Not because he always has the answers, but because he knows how to stay present when most people disappear. And the irony, that very calmness, that stillness is what ignites a woman's passion. Because when she feels that you can stay grounded even when things get messy, she feels safe to fully express herself, emotionally, physically, spiritually. She doesn't have to shrink, soften, or censor herself around you. She knows you won't collapse under the weight of her intensity, and that freedom, that safety, it's the soil where real intimacy grows. Here's the deeper truth. Your greatest power isn't in how you perform when you're at your best. It's how you behave when you're at your worst, when life pressures you, when your partner frustrates you, when your plans fall apart. Who are you then? Do you retreat into blame? Do you erupt with anger? Do you ghost or withdraw? Or do you remain anchored even in uncertainty? Because if you want to be irresistible, if you want to be unforgettable, it's not about avoiding difficult moments. It's about leading yourself through them. That's the man a woman can follow. That's the man who can lead a family, build a legacy, create a life that's not just impressive but meaningful. So what does this look like in action? It looks like pausing before you speak when you're hurt. Like owning your emotional responses instead of projecting them. Like listening to understand, not to defend. It means showing up in moments where it would be easier to walk away. It means being present even when it's uncomfortable. Because in those moments you prove not just to her, but to yourself that you are trustworthy. And when you trust yourself to handle pressure, you stop fearing loss. You stop reacting from scarcity. You begin relating from abundance, and in that space, relationships stop being a power struggle. They become a dance, one rooted in mutual respect, not silent resentment, in truth, not manipulation. Women don't fall in love with your perfection. They fall in love with how you handle your imperfection, with how you recover, how you stay, how you hold even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Let's bring something to light that most men underestimate until it's already too late. Your ability to be fully present mentally, emotionally, and physically is the final layer that separates you from the majority of men she'll ever encounter. And presence is not about proximity. It's not about being around her or spending time with her. It's about your quality of attention, your availability of mind and heart in the moment. That, more than anything, determines the depth of connection you're able to create. You could say the right words, give her time, buy her gifts, and still leave her feeling emotionally starved simply because your attention wasn't in the room. And women, especially those who have done the inner work, can feel that instantly. They know when your body is there but your soul isn't. They know when you're listening only to respond, not to understand. They know when your eye contact is performative rather than penetrating. And no matter how much you try to disguise it, disconnection has a scent. It's subtle, but it's unmistakable. Presence is not something you can fake. It comes from integration, from being aligned with yourself first, not fragmented. When you're disconnected from your own truth, when you're living in your head, caught up in performance or trying to impress, you simply cannot offer full presence to someone else because you haven't offered it to yourself. And that's where most men miss the mark. They try to connect outwardly while being disoriented internally, and that mismatch repels intimacy. True presence requires you to slow down, to stop trying to get somewhere, whether that's in a conversation, in a relationship, or in your emotional life. It requires you to fully arrive in the moment, not with your rehearsed lines or curated responses, but with your real self, your breath, your stillness, your clarity. Because when a woman feels that you are actually there with her, something rare happens. She feels seen. Not scanned, not evaluated, seen. And when a woman feels seen not as an object but as a human being, her entire nervous system relaxes. She softens, she opens, not because you said the right thing, but because she trusts the energy behind your presence. That energy is the foundation of emotional safety. And emotional safety is the gateway to deep connection, lasting attraction, and transformative intimacy. Presence doesn't need to be loud. It's not theatrical. It's subtle. It's in the way you listen with your eyes, not just your ears. In the way you don't rush to fix, to judge, to redirect the conversation. It's in the way you hold silence, in how you respond without urgency, without ego. It's in your ability to stay with her emotionally even when what she's saying makes you uncomfortable. Even when it triggers something inside you, because presence doesn't mean agreement. It means willingness to stay, to feel, to witness without retreating. You want to know what makes a man unforgettable to a woman. It's not just his charm. It's not even his ambition. It's his ability to remain present in emotionally charged spaces. His refusal to check out when she becomes emotional. His strength to hold himself steady when she's testing his depth. His capacity to stay with her, not to fix her, not to silence her, but to see her in that moment and hold it. That's rare and that's powerful. Let me make this very clear. Your presence is not only about what you give her, it's about how you experience yourself in the world. When you walk into a room fully in your body, grounded in who you are, aware of what you feel, you shift the entire atmosphere without saying a word. People sense it, women feel it. It's not something you have to announce, it announces itself. And here's what's fascinating when you are fully present with a woman. She doesn't just feel emotionally fulfilled. She feels turned on, not just sexually but spiritually, because presence is the bridge between safety and desire. It allows her to relax and to awaken. And this is what most men get wrong. They think they have to choose, either be the emotionally safe guy or the exciting, passionate one. But presence merges both. It's grounded and electrifying. It makes her feel held, not controlled, desired, not consumed. But to give presence, you must first cultivate it. It doesn't come from external effort. It comes from internal practice, learning to sit in stillness, to breathe through discomfort, to quiet the mental chatter, to choose attention over distraction, to be more interested in what is than in what you wish was happening. It's a skill, a discipline, and like anything valuable, it takes work. But here's the reward. The more present you become, the less you have to perform. Because presence, real presence, speaks louder than anything you could say. It communicates leadership, maturity, safety, sensuality all at once. It tells her, I'm not running, I'm not performing, I'm here with you, right now. And that level of attention, that's a love language all its own. So no, presence isn't a tactic to attract women. It's a way of being, a decision to meet life fully instead of passively, a way of honoring yourself first so that others feel honored in your presence. And when you live that way, when you choose to bring all of yourself to each moment, you stop asking, how do I impress her? And start embodying the answer, I'll show her what it feels like to be fully met.